Welcome back to the Luxe Budget. Today is the first day of a Pinot Noir week. So I bought, this is called Presqu'ile. It's a Pinot Noir 2023 from Santa Barbara County. Here's what it looks like. I bought this for about $26, I think, from my local wine shop. And this week I'm going to be pairing that with different variations of a chuck roast. So what I'd like to do going forward is make my videos so that they are centered around one specific kind of like meat or main and then one specific kind of wine. But the trick is that we're going to stretch the wine to make it last the whole week, but then also use one kind of meat, but in different ways so that we're not just stuck eating the same thing over and over again. I could never meal prep because I would just get bored eating whatever meal I came up with, like on day two, after day two. So I got it was almost 3 pounds of chuck roast from Whole Foods. It was about just under $30. And I prepared the entire thing today. I coated it in salt and pepper, and then I seared it in my Dutch oven on like medium-high heat in olive oil. And I seared it on all sides for about 4 minutes each side. And then I put it in the oven. Oh, actually, first I put about a cup of beef broth. Well, I was supposed to use beef broth, but I had bean broth that I added a little bit of bouillon to. Again, we can't get too fancy here. This is all about making things luxurious, but in a way that is not cost prohibitive, that isn't wasteful, and that isn't too complicated. So I used the broth that I had on hand, and then I covered it and then put it in the oven at 325 for about 2.5 hours. So this is what I got on our first day here. I had a different video that I thought I was recording in, and I walked through this a little bit more before I dressed it. But so for day number one, I took about a quarter of the chuck roast and had this little portion, which came pretty well apart from the rest of it, but maintained its structural integrity. There are other parts of it that are just kind of falling apart, which is great. That's what you want typically with chuck roast. But for this specific preparation on day number one, I wanted more of a real hunk that would stay together. And so what I covered it in was this like herby, oniony salsa, chimichurri like kind of thing. I'm not sure exactly what you would call it, but it's basil and dill and white onion with lemon juice, olive oil, red pepper flakes, salt and pepper. And I just mix it up to about this consistency, maybe a little bit less oily once I put it on the actual meat. And yeah, so now we're just going to try this. We're going to try the wine first. I already let this breathe for a second. And when I thought I was recording, I was a little perplexed by this because you smell some darker fruit. So maybe like a cherry, maybe raspberry. Because what I was saying before when I thought I was recording is that I smell some dark fruit, I think, but Pinot Noir is a lot brighter than like a Cab or a Syrah or a Grenache. Grenache? I don't know. And so this is actually why I created this like herby salsa to go on this chuck roast, because typically when you have red meat, you think red wine when you've got red meat, but you typically want to go with a fuller bodied red, whereas Pinot Noir is quite light bodied. So in order to make the pairing work a little bit better, I added this salsa that would add a little brightness to the really heavy, complex nature of the red meat. So it's never a perfect science, and since I don't want any of my recommendations to be cost prohibitive, I don't want people to feel like they have to go out of their way to find things that will pair perfectly. We're going for good or really good pairings, not perfect or exemplary pairings, because first and foremost, it's all incredibly subjective, but then it's also something that you can tamper with. So is Pinot Noir the ideal pairing for a chuck roast or for steak in general? It's not, but you can also adjust things so that they work better together. And then that way, if you have a bottle of wine on hand that you want to use, you don't need to switch that out for something that's supposed to work better, that other people say is supposed to work better for whatever meat or other main dish that you have on hand as well. So it's all about adjusting and tinkering with things enough so that they pair well, and so that you can create a meal, create a pairing that is very good, that's delicious, but isn't centered around needing to spend a ton of money on a bottle of wine or on a piece of meat, or spending a lot of, or like wasting things, or anything like that. So I've gone on long enough. Let's take a sniff of the wine. So I think it's raspberry. It may be cherry on the nose. Okay, let's take a sip. It's really good. I would say that the taste on the palate is really similar to the notes that you get when you're just smelling it. So there isn't a big difference between what I smell and what I taste. Sometimes when you get a wine, you smell something and then what you end up with on the palate is just completely different. So this is really good. I think standalone, this wine is probably like a 7.7. It's good. I'm not that into reds. I'm also I'm not that terribly into reds right now. It changes. So 7.7 on its own. Something just fell. Let's try it with the chuck roast and I still haven't decided what I'm going to call it yet. Herby Salsa, something like that. Okay, I'm actually going to get a little extra here. Cheers. Wow. I don't want to toot my own horn, but wow, that's really good. It's the chuck roast is very tender, it's very fatty, and the herbs and the onions and the lemon and all of that brightness on top of it is just a really interesting combination. It's unexpected, but it's very good. And it's like I've got a competition in my mouth between the really like down-to-earth fatty flavors of the meat and the very bright citrusy flavors of the salsa. So now that I've had a bite of that, I think I'm gonna get in trouble because the first what, like 6-7 videos, I've given pretty high ratings. Unless I really dislike it, it's not gonna go below a 5. So wine, the food, unless it's bad, it's 5.0 or above. And I'm just using like school rules for that. But together, wow. The fattiness of the meat really brings down that brightness of the wine in a good way, where it goes down super smooth and you're almost left with like just that raspberry, whereas like the alcohol taste is mitigated a little bit. Not that the alcohol taste is bad, but it just makes this so smooth. Okay, we're gonna do one more. I'm gonna try to get a piece that's a little bit less fatty. Wow. That's really good. And it was so easy to make this too. I'm excited for the next videos because I won't even have to cook it then. I'm just gonna warm it up into whatever other concoctions I want to make. Okay, I think together this is like an 8.3, maybe an 8.2. I can still see how the chuck roast would be better served by a more viscous, more full-bodied one. I'm thinking a cab would be really, really good here. But the herbs and the lemon really help connect the light-bodied Pinot with the really umami flavors of the chuck roast. Okay, well, we're gonna pour a little bit more. And I am going to go read or something. If you'd like the recipe for this or a more comprehensive layout on how I put all this together, let me know in the comments and I will write it out for you. All right, bye everybody. Cheers.